So I'm recording the video now. So I have to do this process again. So the first thing first we need to do is, let's set our configuration. The first thing you will do is to set your username, and you do that by saying git config -- global user dot name. Then you type your name in apostrophe. So mine is Precious Iriaevho. Enter. Now you set your global username. The next thing you will do is to set your global email. So I will do mine git config global user.email, and you type in your email address. So you don't need an apostrophe if there's no space in between. So I'm going to just use a nonsense email. But the point is, you understand, after your .com, you press enter. So when you press enter, it's going to record your user email. Now, the third configuration you need to do is for your major branch. I will tell you what branch is later, but just understand what I'm doing here. I'm doing 3 configurations. This is the third one. Git config global init dot default yeah. Oh shit, I'm sorry, let me get them in. I mean, that's the problem. We should have come in all at 8 o'clock. Sorry. Okay, I've let them in now, so let me proceed. Okay, you know what? Let me give you a job. Always tell me when they are asking let me in, because it's so big. Yes, so please do that for me. So git init default branch master. So master is going to be the name of your major branch. You would see why we are using master. Yours could be main. I like to use master. So enter. Now we can go back. Remember, I've done the git init. So git init is what gave me this folder here. So I don't need to do it anymore. You use git init to initialize Git. When you do that, you will get this folder in your computer. That is to say, Git is ready to track any change that I make to this folder. Now, the next thing you need to do is, you need to understand that when you are using Git, you can try to get help, trying to understand the commands that you are using. And the first one you can use is git config. So this is the command. Config is a command. So I want to get help for the config command. So you say git config -h. And you see, because my screen is so big, so it's all messed up, but it's showing you an help file for the config command. It says config file location sets global config file and system configuration, and that is what we've just done. Now, the next thing you need to know is how to clear your terminal. I know you can do that already, and we actually need it because the terminal is messy now. So let's clear it. Yeah, some people want to come in. Sorry, please, let me get them in. So let me go back. Now the terminal is clear. The next thing, now that you have your terminal clear, is to check what we call Git status. Now that Git is tracking this folder, it is important for you to know the status of the folder and the files inside of the folder. And how do you know the status of the files inside of this folder? You use what we call Git status, and you'll be using this a lot. On my screen, Git status is telling me that on the branch, Okay, I can't find them anymore. Yeah. Okay. It's not. I can't find it. Yeah. All right. So, a quick summary. Please go on mute. Okay, so a quick summary. I sent a file previously and I asked us all to download it and extract it to on our computer. And if you've done that, you're going to have these 4 files. Then after that, I did something called git init to initialize Git. So let me clear the terminal again. So I did git init to initialize Git. And when you do this, that is when you get this folder in your computer, Git. This comes from Git, and this is what starts tracking your file. Now, the next thing was, I showed you some configuration file, but I'm sorry I won't go over that. You would have to watch it in the recorded video because some guys were here before you. Now, after git init, you use git status to check the status of your file. So this was where we were at. And now, git status is telling us that on the branch master, remember the global configuration we set for the branch. I called mine master. If yours is called something else, that would be the name here. Git is also telling us that there are no commits yet. That is, Git is not tracking your files. And you can see it says untracked files. The first untracked file is index.htm. The second one is logo.png, recipe.htm, and salary.txt. Git is not tracking our file. And for you to make Git track your file, you have to use another command. Like let's make Git track index.htm file. And how do we do that? Let me clear the terminal, it's too big. So git add index.htm. It has to be a file on the on your folder. Add. Git is tracking this file now. And how do I confirm that? I use git status. As you can see, Git is now telling me that there is a new file that it is watching. Git is currently watching this file. Any change I make to this file, Git is going to track it. But Git is not tracking these other files. And that is not the problem. I just want you to understand that you can track a single file. But what's the point in tracking a single file when you want to track everything in the folder, right? So to remove a file from being tracked, you use what is called git remove. Actually, that command is right here. Git remove cached. Sorry, I have to let this person in. I'll check that settings later. Git command cached, then index. Remember, we are tracking index file alone, but I want to remove it from being tracked. HTM. And now it says removed index.htm. Now let's use git status to check that file, to see what Git is doing. Git status. As you can see, we are back to square one. Git is no longer tracking any file. Like I told you before, we want Git to track everything in the folder. I mean, why are we using Git if it's not to track everything in the folder? But there is a problem. I have a folder or a file that should be secret called salary. I mean, I don't want you to see the salary of my employees, right? So I need to take this folder or this file out of the tracking. That is to say that even though Git can track everything in your folder, you can tell Git to ignore some files. And how do we do that? We use what is called Git ignore. Sorry, I just want to let some guys in. So we use what is called Git ignore, and I'm going to create that file. So to get your Git ignore to ignore files, you have to create the file, and it's called, you open your test document, Control A, it's a dot file, so you say dot git, Git ignore. That is, you're telling Git to ignore some files. Yes, so this file has been created, and if we check Git status, Git should be tracking it. Don't worry, no cause for alarm, we are on track. Git should be tracking this file. But now I don't want Git to be tracking my salary.txt file, because if I upload it to GitHub, anybody in the world can see the salary of my staff, and it's not nice. So the next thing we need to do is, let's go back to the folder and let's edit the Git ignore file. I don't want to do all this in command prompt. I want you to see the way it is done easily. So let me open a notepad file or notepad file, a notepad document. Then I will drag Git ignore into it. It's the same thing as opening it. So Git ignore is open now. For comments, you can use your £sign. These are files I want to hide from the world. And the first file we want to hide from the world is what file? The salary.txt file. So let's hide this file, salary.txt. You type it exactly the way it is. Save. Now let's go back to Git and let's see if Git would ignore this file. The previous command we did is telling us that salary is being tracked, right? Let's do Git status again. Get used to Git status. Somebody wants to come in. So as you can see, this was the first command I did. Salary was being tracked, but when I added salary to the notepad file, salary is no longer being tracked. I hope you understand what has happened, because I added it to the Git ignore file. Now, the next thing I want you to know is there is another problem between you and I. Because you can see my Git ignore file, I believe you also know that I'm hiding something. And for someone like me, if I know that you're hiding something, it makes it, I become very more motivated to find that stuff that you're hiding. So what do you think we should do? We also need to hide the Git ignore file, so that when anybody does Git status or check our files, they will only see this and they would never know that we are hiding anything with Git ignore. So how do you hide Git ignore? You put Git ignore inside Git ignore. Let's do that. Git ignore, because Git ignore is a file in your folder, so you can use Git ignore to hide Git ignore. It's simple as that. So let's save it and let's do our Git status again. Git status. And as you can see, we are no longer tracking our salary file, and we are no longer tracking our Git ignore file. So if you are not at the beginning of this video, maybe you joined recently, you wouldn't even know that there was a salary file previously, and you would never know. But you all know because we are doing it together. So now that we've been able to hide all the files that we want to hide, the next step is to tell Git to start tracking our file. And the word you use is called staging. So let me explain it. Everything I have in this folder is called working file. It's your script. You can call it your working file. But Git is not tracking anything I do to these files. The only way you can make Git to track any changes that you've made is to tell Git to stage the file. As you can see, but before I go, you can see we have Git ignore here, salary here. You can see it on your computer, but Git can never see it anymore. Let me do it one more time for you to see. Git status. Git can't see them. Git is only seeing 3 files, but we have 5 files. We have git ignore and salary, but Git is never going to see them anymore because we are hiding them with git ignore. So let's clear. Now, to tell Git to stage the file, to tell Git to record all the change that you're making, you have to stage it. And how do you stage it? You can use 3 commands. The first command you use is called git add. So you say git add all git add all. That's the first command you can use to tell Git to start tracking all your files. The second one you can use is git add capital letter A. And the third one, which I prefer the most, is git add dot. And that's what I'll be using for this tutorial. And I believe you may fall in love with it too, just like the way I've done. So git add dot is going to tell Git to start tracking any changes that we make to the file. So when I press enter, you see what happens. Nothing on your screen. And how do you see what Git has done? You use git status. Sorry, that's in capital letter. Git status. And as you can see, there are new changes. Git has seen them as new file, and Git is tracking them. Any change we make to these files now, Git is going to record it. Now, let me try to make a change to one of the files. Someone is in. So let me try to make a change to one of the files. Let me make a change to index. Let me just drag it to Notepad. So it's a simple thing. Let me just say, hi everyone. Then you save. Changes to index. To see what has happened, we can use git status so that you will know that Git is actually checking that file. Git is looking at it already. Git status. And what can you see here? Git is telling me that, hey Precious, you've just modified index.html. Let me clear your doubt. Let's do it again. I'm going to edit the recipe.html file. It's a lot of gibberish, but I'm just going to put nonsense at the bottom. So I'll say nice recipe. Let's go back to Git and let's see what Git is tracking. You see, Git is now tracking both files. It means Git has noticed from when we staged it that we have made a new change to index. Remember, we changed it. I added something to index. And Git has also noticed that I added a change to recipe.html. But there's a problem. All you are doing right now is telling Git to be watching your files. So Git is now like a cameraman. Git is just watching these files. Any change you make, Git will record. Any change you made, Git is looking at it. But right now, Git has not stored it in memory. Like when you store something in a database, you store money in the bank, you put, let's just use storing money in the bank. So right now, all these files have not been stored in the Git bank. And how do you store your files in Git bank? Let's clear. You use what we call commit. So remember, I told you before that there are 3 stages to this. The first one is your working file. Your working file is the folder that you are working in. The folder you are working in. Then second, when you use git add, when you use this command, git add dot, Git stages your file. It starts recording it. So take note of this. Anytime you use this, you are telling Git, record any change that I'm making. Look at it. Anything I do, watch it. You know, be the neighborhood grammar, watch everything I'm doing. Now that Git has been watching so much, it's getting tired. Now we need to tell Git, okay, oh, all these files that you've been watching, it's time for you to pack them and keep them somewhere. And that is called commit. So now we need to commit this file to the memory of Git. And how do we do that? We use this command called git commit. Commit is the command, then dash message. So it's good for you to add a message when you are committing your file. So you are telling Git so that when you go back to the bank and you are telling them, please, I want to withdraw so amount of money, they need to know which of the money or which of the bank account are you talking of. So let's call this our first commit. Let me let that person in before I proceed. So git commit -m, our first commit. That is, we are telling Git any change that we have made previously, record it, okay? Snap it and keep it in the bank so that in the future we can always come back to the first commit. So I say enter, and as you can see, Git is telling us something here. It said to the master branch, it has committed, sorry guys, to the master branch, it has committed the following files: index.htm, logo.png, and recipe.htm. It can't commit the files that we were not tracking. Remember, we're not tracking salary and git ignore. So all the changes we've made, see, 3 files have changed, 48 insertions. Git has recorded all this to memory. So right now, if we do git status again, I've told you, you have to always learn how to use git status. On branch master, Git is telling us that there are no changes to be added to commit because we've committed everything to Git. So let's proceed. Now that you've added everything, you've committed everything to Git, you can check the differences in your file. That is, what happened before you committed to Git, what changes were made. So we could use what we call git diff. As the name implies, it checks for differences, what you had before and what you have presently. So if we do git diff, let me scroll up. Remember, we changed index.htm. So remember, I deleted this folder previously. I think I didn't save something. Okay, it was saved. So this is a new test branch. Okay, so Git is saying that, hey Precious, you deleted these 3 lines. And that's, let me open the index.htm file. But there is something with our tracking. I didn't track this file. So anyways, Git is saying that these are the differences you've made. You edited this file, but the new change that you've done, you modified, but I've not recorded it. And that is why it is showing us this here. So let me exit out of this. Okay, it's right there actually, sorry. So everyone. So look at it. It's right there. So this minus is saying that these lines were deleted. Then I added this new one called everyone back then. So let's leave this place. So you use Q to quit. So now that we have our, please someone should mute the microphone. Okay, so now that we've done our first commit, we can do more commits. So you do commits based on what you're doing. So let's assume after I did that last commit, a lot of changes were made. I made some edits to the files. I added more files. So as I was saying, so let's assume after the last commit was made, you know, as a programmer, you will start adding more features to your website. So along the line, I was told that I should add a new file, and maybe that new file should be called, I don't know, let's call it rice. So it's a recipe type. So we added new files. We did a lot of stuff. We added more recipes. We added beans. It doesn't need to make sense to you. So you need to understand that after the first commit, we are working more on our folders, and now we've added more files. So when you go back and let me clear the terminal, and you use git status is now telling you that you modified index.recipe before and it has not been staged for commits. And also remember now that we added new files because the website owner told us that they love beans and rice in their restaurant, so we need to add it to the website. So now we've added beans and rice recipe, but we've not tracked it. We've not tracked it because we've not added it to staging. So how do you add to staging? Remember what I told you, git add dot. So what you need to know is that anytime you've made a major change or you've done a lot of development, you've typed a lot of lines of code, for you not to lose track, you have to stage it so that Git will start recording everything you do to it. So git add dot, and now Git is tracking all the files. For us to confirm that, let's use git status again. So as you can see, Git is brilliant to know that beans is a new file, and index and htm are modified files, and the other new file we have is rice. And now we can commit this again to Git. And how do you commit? Remember, you use git commit. So take note, we are making our second commit now. That is, if we want to revert, we have two stages we can revert back to. So let's do the second commit. Git commit, then the message, and let's say we added, so you see your message has to be relevant. We added beans and rice recipe. I mean, it has to be relevant. I mean, that's exactly what we did, right? We added beans and rice recipe. So we want Git to record this in memory. And there you have it. Beans.htm, rice.htm has been added to the commit. So if we do the git status again, as you can see, is this not wonderful? Git is now telling us that on the branch master, there is nothing for me to record. Please, whoever is clearing the throat should mute the microphone. Thank you. So Git is telling us now that there is nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. That is to say, we have committed everything that we have to Git, and Git is taking care of it. Now, you may want to know, is there a way for us to check everything that Git has been committing? Yes, you can check it. I mean, wouldn't you like to know how many commits you've made? So to be able to do that, you use what we call git log. Let me let the person in before I continue. You use what we call git log. And when I press enter on git log, you can see what has happened. Git is now telling us that we have made 2 commits. All right, and the very first commit is the one at the bottom. This is the commit number when we made the commits, the ID, and this was the author of the person who made the commit, and the date that commit was made. So this was the first commit. Then after we added new files, remember we made a new commit and we gave it a message. We said we added beans and rice, and Git has tracked it already. So now we have 2 commits in with Git on this folder. But then this is the latest one. But this is looking too long, so we can do a shorter one. We can say git log. Let me clear it first. So git log 1 line. So this is a shorter version of the previous log, and you see it's simpler now. So Git is just telling us that we have 2 commits. The only difference is you don't know the author and the date it was done. So Git, we have 2 commits currently with Git. The first one is our first commit. The second one is we added beans and rice recipe. This is the latest one. So what if we want to, assuming we want to change the message, maybe this message was not correct and the owner of the website, or when we want other developers to understand what we meant properly. So, you know, we said we added beans and rice recipe. We could just say we added new recipe. And how do we do that? So what we are trying to do now is we are trying to edit the commit message, but you can only edit the message for the last commit. So let's edit this message and let's see. So you say git commit -m, then let's change the message. Let's say we added new recipes, beans and rice. Then you have to add a new flag called amend. Please, we're not coming down. Can you go on mute, please? Thank you. So this line is going to change, is going to edit the commit, the commit message, the last commit we made. And let's see. So you see, Git is telling us that the commit message has been changed. But for us to see it properly, let's use our command again. Git log -- one line. So as you can see, that message has been changed from we added beans and rice to we added new recipes, beans and rice. Now, the next thing you would want to know is, how do you change back to a commit? So how do we go back to a commit? You know, now we've been adding new commits, right? We have 2 commits. How do we go back to this first commit? That is, how do we take Git to take us back to when we started? Remember that we've stored this to memory, so Git can only go back to this. Let me do this as an example. So if you used to play game a lot, there is something we call, so when your player dies in the game, the computer takes you to a place or a previous stage. That's what we are trying to do. So we are trying to go back to a previous stage, and you do that by using git reset. So first you have to copy the code of that commit that you want to go back to. So we want to go back to this first commit. Then you use git reset to go back to it. Git reset, then you put in the code for that commit. Enter. And as you can see, Git has reset. It has unstaged all the changes we made after reset. So Git has unstaged all the changes that we made. And let's check our folder. So all the changes we made back then when we were on Git, on the first commit, Git has gone back to it. So we can confirm by checking index.htm. I think we have everyone was the change we made. Sorry. Okay. So everyone was the change we made. So we've reset back to the changes we made before we committed. So let's see if Git could actually track that. And that reset did not work properly, so something is wrong. So on stage changes after reset, index.htm, recipe.htm. So Git status. Git status will help you with troubleshooting what is happening with your Git file. So I think the problem was we had already staged the file before we committed it, so we may not be able to revert, but then Git is no longer tracking this file. Sorry. So Git is no longer tracking these files. You know what that means? Because remember, when we made the second commit, it was because we wanted to add beans and rice. But Git is telling you now that you've gone back. I'm not seeing them anymore. So let's check our Git log to see if that is true. I like to use one line. So as you can see, we've gone back to our previous commits. Git is no longer tracking the new files we added. So even though the files are here, Git cannot seek them because they are not tracked. So for you to track them again, you have to stage. And this brings me to a shortcut. So instead of using git add ... every time before you commit, you can do it all at once by saying git commit flag A. So flag A is to tell Git, track everything in the file, then flag A is to tell Git, track everything in the file, then add a message to it. So you are going to do git add and git commit in one line instead of doing git add dot before you do your git commit. So let's call this our recent commit yet again. So you see, 2 files changed, 2 insertions, 5 deletions. the files has been updated. Now if we use our git log one line again, you can see we are back to 2 commits again. So that's that on git commit. Now let me clear this. So before I proceed to the next phase, I just want us to understand that the very first thing you need to know is when you start programming, you would have a file like this. Then for you to tell Git to start tracking any change that you make to this file, you use the git init like I've done previously. Then when you do the git init, Git is going to add this folder to your file so that it starts tracking everything. Then when you have some files that you don't want the world to see, like the salary file, you use a git ignore file to hide it. So you hide this file inside git ignore, then you also hide git ignore inside of git ignore. So that is why even though you can see salary in our folder, you can see git ignore in our folder, you can never see git ignore. You can never see git ignore in our, sorry please. You can never see git ignore in our tracked files. So that is the most important thing, or that is the reason why you need to use git ignore to hide the file. And like I said, I always try to use this to add all the files to staging. So also, I know you know this already, we have some files that we may not need. So the owner is telling me right now that there is no point having beans in the recipe, so we have to take it out. So if you've done your Linux command, you should already know how to do this. So it's basically removing the file. So you do that with git remove, then the file name beans.htm. Oh sorry, I have changes in the file that I've not removed. So I can force Git to remove it. So I say that's because I've not committed the file. So git remove, then use the flag to force it, then remove beans.htm. So beans.htm has been taken out of the equation. Now, there is something else you need to know. So, you are a programmer and you've been doing great, but all of a sudden you got employed, with a firm, and you need to work or collaborate with other developers. Remember, I told you initially that with Git, you can collaborate with a lot of people. So, let's assume that I want to collaborate with, let's say, 10 other guys from this call right now. It is very wrong for us to change the master file. Please take notes. This master file is what you can see right here. So imagine I have myself, Precious, I have Tunde, I have Wale, I have Bimbo, I have Tosin, and every one of us, we are working on index file. So imagine what would happen. So let's say I'm on index file, I just did hi everyone, I am Precious. Then 2 hours later, Tosin came into the file and Tosin edited index. Tosin removed my name. Tosin said, hi everyone, I am Tosin and I own this. Then after that, Steven came in, and Steven was so angry, he deleted everything and he decided to just type nonsense into the file. There is a problem. And what is that problem? It means that any changes those guys are making will be reflected on your website immediately. And that is not good. So this leads us to the next milestone called branching. Why is branching important? So branching, the word branch, like the tree branch. Branching is a way for you to tell Git to create a copy of the file. So I know you are looking at this, you're looking at all this folder, and it looks like it's on my computer, yes. But Git is going to create different branches of this same folder. Nothing is changing. The name is not changing. See, it's Gitty. The name will never change. Everything will be the same. But you can only notice that change in the terminal. So before I proceed, let me just commit everything so that we don't have any errors with our files. So if you are following me, I believe you can murmur this behind. You could say git add, git add dot. So we've staged everything. Let's use git status. So new file rise has been added and has been staged. So please, let's commit this. So git commit message. So let's call this commit before we started branching, so that we don't have anything left behind. So let's use git status to see if our working tree is clean. Yes, now good. Git is telling us now that our working tree is clean. Now let's go back. Clear. Like I told you before, we are on a branch called master. Master is the main branch. From the configuration, if you called yours main or anything, that would be the name here. So mine is master, and that is my main branch. But like I told you, I'm not the only one working on this file anymore. There are like 10 other developers, and it is not nice that we all work on the master file. So the next thing you need to do is you have to create a branch of the master. That is to say, you will tell Git, please copy everything in this folder and create another branch for me. So first things first, let's see how many branch we have. So git branch, as you can see, we have just one branch, master. Now we want to create another branch. So let me clear. Let's do it. So to create a branch, to tell Git to copy all the files you have in that folder and create another branch for you, you say git branch, then the name of the branch. For the purpose of this class, and because I am the one working on this particular branch, let's use my name. So let's call this branch Precious. Now let's see if the branch has been created. So you use git branch to check the branches that you have on this particular folder. And as you can see, we now have 2 branches. But please note, we are currently working on master branch. That is why it is colored, and that is why it has an asterisk here. So that is to say, everything we have inside of this file is for master branch. Take note. Everything you have inside here now is for master branch. Now, we should not edit this because it's master branch, right? So we need to tell Git to move to the next branch. And how do we move to the next branch? You use git switch. You use git switch, then the name of the branch you want to switch to. You see, we are on master here. We want to go into Precious branch because Precious wants to edit the files. So let's go into the Precious branch. Now Git is telling us that we have switched to Precious branch. I can't see the person. We have switched to Precious branch. Let's clear it so that we can work from the top. As you can see now, Git is now telling you that we are on Precious branch. Let's confirm again. Git branch. As you can see, the color has changed from master to Precious, and asterisk is on Precious. And you can also know that by what you have here. So now we are working with the Precious branch. What this means is that everything I have inside of this file now, if I make any change, it's not going to go to master branch. Any change I make here will be on Precious branch. Take note. Any change I make here will be on Precious branch. Let's confirm that. So I've committed this, so I'm going to leave this gibberish so that it's not going to mess with our program. Okay, no, wrong file. Don't save because that was from master. So let me open Notepad again. Remember, we are on Precious branch. So I want to edit index now. Good. Now, this index file is on Precious branch, and let's confirm it together. This is Precious branch. Only him should change this file. Save. Sorry, let me let that guy in, or lady. So I was editing that. This is Precious branch. Only him should change this file, right? Good. Now I've saved it. Remember, this folder is currently Precious folder. Precious branch. So any change is only on Precious branch. Now let's confirm that. So before we go back, before we confirm it, let's commit. So you can also do all the commands on the different branches. So let's stage everything inside of Precious branch, or let's use status so that you would see what has happened. So as you can see on Precious branch, Git status is telling me now that I have modified index.html. I did that in front of you just now. This is it. This is the change Git is talking about. So let's stage it. And how do we stage it? How do we, when I say staging, I mean tracking. And when I mean tracking, I'm saying Git, put your camera on this file. We use git add dot. There's a reason why I keep saying it, so that I want to reinforce it in your mind. So git add dot. Now Git is recording the file. Let's confirm that Git is actually doing that. Git status. And as you can see, modified. Now let's commit. Git commit and let's be truthful. This change was made on Precious branch. Remember, we are still on Precious branch. Perfect. So git status. Our working branch is clean. Precious branch is currently clean. So let's clear. Now, this is Precious branch. Only him can change this file. But now let's confirm that all the changes we made were only made to the Precious branch, right? So let's do that together. And how do we do that? The first thing is we need to change this folder back to the master branch, right? So we say git switch master, and now we are back to master branch. See, take note, master. Before we were on Precious, now we are back to master. Now let's confirm that that change that we made to that file was only made to that Precious branch. Let's confirm it, that our major file was not, our master file was not changed. So let me move this here, and as you can see, this is master branch and nothing was changed on master branch. But if we go back to Precious branch, you would see that the change was done. Let's go back to Precious branch so that you will understand why you should not edit your master branch but make your changes on a separate branch. So let's switch back to Precious branch. Switch to Precious. Now let's go back and check that file. Remember, so I've opened Notepad and I'm going to drag it. So now this entire folder now is the Precious branch, and as you can see, this is Precious branch. So all the changes I made are now on my branch, but they are not on master. Now this leads us to the next point. So now that Precious is done with all the changes he wants to do, he has done all the changes he wants to do on the Precious branch. He has shown it to the chief developer and they say, okay, Mr. Precious, you're good to go. Now you can move it to the main website or the master branch. Then you have to switch back to your master branch so that you can merge both files. That is, merging means you are adding the changes you made to the Precious branch to the main branch. So let's switch back to master, and we are back to master. So before we make that merge, I want you to see it one last time. This folder, this entire folder now is now for master. Again, take notes. Now if I open the file again, this index.html, that text I typed then, this is Precious blah blah blah, is not on master. Okay, so that is because the changes were made on Precious branch. Now let's proceed. Now that we are on master and I've been given the go ahead to bring in the changes I made on the other folder to the main folder, all you need to do is you use a command called git merge, and git merge, as it says, will help you to combine both files together. So git merge, then you put a message and say Precious made some changes. So git merge Precious made some changes, then that branch that you want to add to the master branch. So we are adding the Precious branch. So we want to add Precious branch to master branch. So we are merging it. So any change that is there now, we enter into our master branch. Let's confirm that. As you can see, it says updating blah blah blah, no commits created, 1 file change, 2 insertions. Let's check with Git status. Nothing to commit. So let's check our file now. Let's check the index. This is still master file, and let's see if that test from Precious branch has been transferred down here. And as you can see, we are on master branch, and all the changes we made in Precious, because we have merged the file, they are now inside of the master branch. Pretty straightforward. Now the next thing you want to do is, since I'm done with the Precious branch, there is no need for me to keep it anymore. So I need to delete it. And how do I delete it? You say git branch D for delete, then Precious. That's the name of that branch. So you see, deleted branch Precious, because we don't need it anymore. All our changes have been committed. Now if we use git branch to check, you can see that we are only left with one branch. We are only left with one branch. Now, there is something else I would like you to understand. Sometimes there are stubborn people, and these guys, they would go ahead to go and edit that master branch while you are working on a separate branch. So let's do something quickly. Let's create a branch and switch to it immediately. Git switch. First, let me confirm if there are no changes for us to commit. There is no changes, so clear. Git. So for you to create a branch and switch to it immediately, use git switch flag C. Then let's call this Bimbo. So Bimbo is the lady working on the new branch. But the problem is, Bimbo did not tell me that she created a branch. Or let's just say I'm working on a website alone, but all of a sudden they didn't tell me that there's a new developer on board. Instead, they just gave the person the login to the cPanel to work on it. So without me knowing, I was working on master file on my own happily, while Bimbo was also making changes to Bimbo file. So currently all this folder now is for Bimbo. So let's do something. So let's edit something for Bimbo. So I'll drag this here, and this is Bimbo. So let me delete everything here and just type our name, Bimbo. So we know that all the changes here was made by Bimbo, right? Or let's say Bimbo made this change. Thanks. So Bimbo made this change. Thank you. So let's commit what Bimbo has done to memory. So git add dot, then let's commit it. Git commit m. Let's just call it Bimbo changes. So Bimbo changes have been noted. But like I was saying, I was not informed that Bimbo has created a branch and Bimbo was working on it. So without me knowing, I went ahead to work on the master file. So let me go back to git branch master. Oh, sorry, I was creating it. Git switch master. So I'm on git switch, I'm on master now. Now let me check the status of the file. So now Bimbo has made changes to that previous file, but me, I did not know. So I came back to the site and I want to edit index. So remember, on Bimbo's file, we have what here? Bimbo changed this, thanks. But now this is index, so I will just say this is Precious changing index. Now this is a problem. I've got to change index while Bimbo was working on a branch, and naturally I have also gone ahead to commit. So I've also gone ahead to even commit the file. Commit Precious Iriaevho. So I made the error. So I've made an error by changing that file without me knowing. Now, if I now try to, so later the website owner called me and said, "Oh, Mr. Precious, we had a new developer called Bimbo. So Bimbo has been making some changes. Can you please merge everything Bimbo has done to the main site?" And unfortunately, I have also changed the master file. So now there will be what we call conflict. Now, let's see how the conflict works. So git merge message. So I want to add Bimbo's edit, and Bimbo's file was called Bimbo. Now you can see on the screen it says there is a conflict. Why? Because when Bimbo made a change, I've also gone to make change to the master file. So Git cannot do it automatically anymore. We have to intervene. Take note of what we have here, master merging. What happens now is Git has created another branch, a temporary branch where you can edit the index file to remove what Bimbo has done or to remove what Precious has done. So let's go back and confirm that. This folder is no longer master branch, is no longer Bimbo file, is no longer Bimbo branch, but now it is master/merging branch. And let's see what happens when I open the index file. Because Git cannot do it automatically, we have to intervene. Now see what Git has done to both files. Git actually brought all the two changes we made together, but Git does not know which one is important. So we have to help Git. So since Bimbo was the latest developer to work on the site, let's assume Bimbo's edit was the correct one. So we have to delete everything Precious did up to add, delete, then also remove this Bimbo arrow stuff and leave it as it is, then save. And when you save that, you can close it, then we can go back to completing the Git merge. No, sorry, that's the wrong command. So we fixed the error. The next thing for us is to switch back to our master branch. So we say git switch master. Oh, sorry, I needed to quit. So git merge quit, so that I can quit out of this new branch that was created. So now I'm out of the branch, and now everything in this folder is back to master branch. So now we can delete whatever Bimbo has done. So let's check all the branches that we have, and now we can delete Bimbo's branch by saying git branch. I'm trying to repeat myself so that, you know, when you watch the video again, you may be able to understand why I've been doing some things. No, we have to delete it. So we have to force it to delete because we don't care about it anymore. So yes, Bimbo is gone. So now that is that on Git. And in a recap of what we've done so far in this video, we've been able to initialize Git. We've been able to check the status, stage our file, commit the file, make changes. We've been able to create branch, make changes to the branch, merge it, and we've been also able to even resolve conflicts in our file. So the next thing we need to work on is for us to go to the big guy itself. And the big guy itself is, like you know already, GitHub. So now that you've been doing all this in your local computer, you understand that it is time for you to upload it. Because if the file is on your computer, if you want to tell me to work on it, I can't work on it if it's on your computer. So for us to work together, This is where GitHub comes in. So please, for understanding, everything we've been doing is just Git. This is Git alone. We've been working on Git, and that is what we're doing on our local computer. But now we have to bring GitHub into the equation. So how do you bring GitHub into the equation? Remember I said previously that GitHub is like a social media platform for developers. So to get GitHub into the equation, you have to register on GitHub. I have an account on GitHub already, but if you don't have an account, you have to go to github.com, then register. After you register, log in, then the next thing for you to do is create repository. So we are trying to move this local file to GitHub, and I'm going to call this my Gitty. So when you create repository, you're going to have something like this: repository name. You can put a description if you want. You can make it public so everybody can work on it, or you make it private so that you can only give access to people who you want to work on it. So like the way guys actually have to ask me to be admitted to this meeting, that is how private works. You have to admit people to be able to work on your file. But let's make this public. A readme file, not for now. A git ignore, we already have one. License, none. Then the next thing is for you to create repository. Don't worry guys, we are almost done. Now Git, you have two commands. The first one is, let's assume you don't have a local file. You can use these commands, but because most times you will start your development from your own computer, so every time you would always use this guy, these 3 lines below. So there's no need to type it, we just need to copy and paste. Ensure you are using HTTPS. So the first thing is, we have to connect our local computer to Git, and especially to this particular repository we've created online. So we are trying to connect this folder to this Git repository. And how do we do that? You copy the first line to your command line, then you paste it. It gets easier from now. So what Git is doing here is Git remote had origin. You can change this origin to anything. Origin is a name, you can change it, but let's leave it as it is. Then enter. Git has connected to this. Git has connected now to this page. Okay, now let's proceed. Now we want Git to go to which branch? Master branch. Remember, my own branch is called master. It has to align. So master. If yours is main, it has to be main. If yours is your name, TT or whatever, it has to align. Now Git has gone in there. The third one is to use the last command. Now you will see what happens. Git push origin. So this is what pushes the file to this repository online. Paste. You see, we don't need to type anymore. It gets better from here. Enter. Now let's wait. Based on the number of files you have and the speed of your internet, Git has pushed everything to that repository. And how do I know that? It's simple. If I refresh this page, I'm not going to see this anymore. So you see, it's gone. Now take note what has happened. Git has pushed all our file, but look at the folder. Remember, we have salary, we have git ignore, we have this .git, but as you can see, Git did not push them. That is why it is important to use git ignore, because right now this script is online. Anybody can see it from anywhere in the world. So if I had not hidden this salary, everybody will see the salary that I'm paying my staff, and it's not good. Also, take note of these messages. I believe you can remember when I was typing all these commit messages. The last one was Precious Iriaevho, when we wanted to add bin boss file. This one was our first commit. Because we never changed logo, that is why it remained at first commit. Then our recent commit, yet again, when we updated this, and the rise one when before we started branching. So as you can see, we've been able to push our file to Git, and that is basically it. So you can check around, make all sorts of settings, issues, pull requests. But for now, I want to keep the scope of this video very simple. Congratulations if you watched it this far. You've been able to use Git, or you've been able to understand how Git works on your local computer and how to push it to your online repository like what we have here, and also hide the files. Now let's assume that no, I'm not done. Let's do something else. So now imagine you have the file on local computer, but now you guys are sophisticated. You don't want to work on your local computer anymore. You are done. You don't want to be messing with the folder here, right? You want to do everything directly to Git. So let's check index. I'm opening index. So take note of what we have here. Let me refresh so it's not like my page is still where it is. You see this? Now we can actually make changes to the file locally and it will be updated on Git. So let's just do that quickly. So let me bring index in here again, and let me say sorry, I think there's a commit issue. Where is my file? Okay, sorry. Yeah, so Git status, let me just confirm something. Yeah, so we have a modification we've not pushed. Let's use this. Good, let's use this. Thank you. So if you check on Git, what we have here is Precious. This is Precious changing index. But on our local computer, what we have is still let me open Notepad again so that you get the point. So on our local computer, what we have is Bimbo made this change, thanks. And I'm going to add something. Now we push to Git. Save. Close it. Oh, now I won't close it. So what we have on our local computer is this, but what we have on Git is different. Now we need to update what we have up here on Git. And how do you do that? It's simple. So just go back to your terminal and let me clear this. So git add all dots, that is to stage the file. Then git, you have to commit it, git commit, then you drop the message and say I am pushing this to Git now. I am pushing to GitHub. I can see an error I've made there. I am pushing to GitHub. So let's commit this. Enter. Committed. Now to push it to that online repository, you use git push -- all. Sit back and watch. As you can see, it's going online. You can confirm by this https blah blah blah. Now let's go back. Remember, this is what we have on our local computer. Bimbo made this. Now we push to Git. But on Git, it was not saying that because we had the whole commit. Refresh this page and see what happens. As you can see, it has been pushed now to Git from our local computer. So if we go back to the main repository, you can see that new comment. I am pushing to GitHub, because that was the latest change we made to the file. That was the latest change. I can't see them. That was the latest change we made to the file. So that is that on pushing to GitHub. But one last thing before we close it. What if you want to download from GitHub to your local computer? You can do it by downloading zip, but you are a developer, you shouldn't be doing that. So instead, you can use, when you click on this, when you are in the repository that you want to download from, click on code, copy. So it will copy this link for you. Then the next thing you need to do is choose a folder that you want to download to. So I want to download it to, let's say, a new folder. So let me just call this Git again. So Git again. Let me go into Git again. Then remember what I taught you from the beginning. To open that command prompt quickly, you can use cmd or git bash. Git bash, enter. It's going to open it in this folder. And now we want to download everything we have on GitHub here. We want to download all this to this folder that is currently empty. So you use the clone command. You use git clone, then you drop the link. You see, it gets easier from here. Then enter. And as you can see, Git is cloning everything. Now if we check that folder, we now have my Git. As you can see, we've downloaded it, and you can start doing your work from your local computer or any computer back to my Git. So guys, I'm sorry I took too much of your time, but you know, sometimes when you start teaching like this, it gets so interesting for you. So I'm glad that some of you guys, you know, stayed all through for I think over 1 hour 20 minutes now, and thank you. And this brings this up. This is the end of the class. No, God bless you too for staying so long. So yes,
so much.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have, do we do the question and answer here, or you want to go check the video out, you want to try your knowledge, then you drop your comments in the group?
I think we should check the video out first.
Okay, so once again, my name is Precious, and I guess you'll be seeing a lot of my face because I intend to do this a lot with you guys. I enjoy it, and I'm not the best, but I mean, let's get that clear. I'm in your cohort, I'm learning like you, but I think I find it easier to understand when I teach. So you may have your style, this is my style, and I'm happy that you all agree to indulge me, so we will fix subsequent classes. But for now, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining up. I'm going to go back on my end and work on the recording, then send it to the group. And I'm also going to send you a manual that you can always use. So I thank you all for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank
Precious
you.
out. Respect. Big one. Oh, God. Yeah, man. Thank you. Okay, see you in the group. See you in the group. I'm ending the call now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.